Hello, everyone, and welcome to Think Yourself Healthy podcast. I'm your host, Heather Duranja. Let's dive into today's episode. Hello, everybody. On today's episode of Think Yourself Healthy, we have special guest, Dr. Fred Moss. He is a holistic psychiatrist serving in many capacities. Telepsychiatrist, speaker, psychiatry expert witness, telehealth educator, mental health coach, and filmmaker. A desire to help people has been the force leading him to various settings and roles as a psychiatrist over the years and compelling him to continually look for better, more effective ways to provide the highest quality care. He is the amazing person behind Welcome to Humanity and Global Madness. Dr. Moss, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you. Every time I hear that bio, it's actually, stuff has happened since that bio is written. And even that bio surprises me. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm that guy. I'm that guy. I'm that guy. And it really is a pleasure to be here with you and your audience. Thank you.
That's exciting. Well, it looks like you've been doing some really good stuff. Tell me a little bit about humanity. Welcome to Humanity and Global Madness.
Yeah. So Welcome to Humanity is about 6 years old now. And Welcome to Humanity is sort of the offspring of a whole life of realizing that who I am is someone who brings connection and communication and creativity as a source of all healing. In order to do that, in order to bring our true voice forward, we have to get that all of the human experience is exquisite, even the stuff that is completely miserable and painful, intolerable, unspeakable. But all of that are opportunities to live the human life. And, Welcome to Humanity then has the implication that it's like an answer you can give to any part of your human experience that isn't going the way you want, or at the same time, or when miracles happen on the other side and ecstasy or beauty in the form of, unimaginable positive outcomes occur, there's also a welcome to humanity there. So it's a matter of really taking on that how we tend to see life very myopically, very restrictively. And Welcome to Humanity is just a way to get that every single second of life up until now, and every second of life between now and when it ends, is part of what this human experience is about. And we're fortunate to have all the experiences we have in humanity. When we get there, one of the things that happens is we start from a level playing field, and we can communicate to each other with the idea that whatever's happening with you or them or her or him, I can resonate with, because it's all in the human experience, whether or not I've experienced it before directly. And Welcome to Humanity allows us to level the playing field and actually create a resonance or a connection that in my world is foundation and fundamental for all healing. Human connection is a prerequisite for healings of all conditions of all types. And I really, it's a good place to start from when we realize that none of us really know what's coming next. And none of us have a good old answer about how life has gone up until now, even though some of us act like that. And it seems like it's the desired presentation is that, hey, I got this. Hey, it's life. I understand it. But in reality, none of us know what the hell we're talking about. And it's really important to get that, because that allows us to start from a place of unified intention.
Can I get an aho? You could not
Exactly.
have said that more better. What a beautiful mission, honestly. I think that all of those components are so necessary for us as humans to embrace. And I think that's where a lot of people get lost.
Exactly. Look, it's not like I seek out highly undesirable, highly disastrous or miserable or intolerable circumstances so that I can say I've done that. But when and while it's happening, I may not also agree that this is a great part of life. Having gone through what we've gone through, though, with the pain or the misery, with the discomfort, one can really see that it probably did help us to grow. It probably did help us to learn. And it opens up doors for even shooting higher for how important it is to live a life worthwhile, to live a life as a contribution, or to live a life that resonates and connects with other human beings.
Absolutely. I know for myself, it was I was very much attached to being the victim for the first 40 years of my life and all of those unfortunate, dramas, traumas, circumstances that I was faced with and had to overcome. And for me personally, when I chose to drop out that victim mentality and embrace and understand how all of these things were happening for me and not to me, it was a game changer.
Yeah. It is. And it's not simple. You might drop that ball every so often still, even though you've kind of been there, done that. When stuff's happening, when it feels like stuff is happening to us, and it sure does seem like it, even every day for me, it's like, wow, how am I to put up with this? Or how am I to make sense of that? Or how am I to proceed in the face of this? Or what if that is so? Or what if it's actually, what if I just am a kind of a victim of my external circumstances, and gloom and doom and mayhem and chaos are just part of life that I'm going to have to succumb to. That's an entirely different mentality than what's available when I can just look at this as data, and somehow I'm still here, somehow we're still having conversations, and somehow we can get that we are unified, and that even in the face of mayhem and chaos and who knows, carnage, or all the things that are happening in our world, there's the possibility of unifying together. And not just a possibility, it's a declaration. Like one can say, my family is 7.8 billion deep, and just have that be the case. We don't have to say that it ends with my brothers and sisters and parents, or we don't have to say it ends with the bloodlines. We can actually say that we are one human race, and it's not so fluffy to say that in these present day and age. It's so easy to get around the world electronically. Mm-hmm. If both of us wanted to call somebody right now in Beijing and Johannesburg and have them join this call, within a minute, we could have people from Beijing and Johannesburg on this call, which makes the world pretty damn small, really. I couldn't even do that when I was a kid, and all I had was my Stingray bicycle. I mean, I had to at least go over there to see somebody. Now we can connect with people from around the world instantaneously. Mm-hmm. And it's silly to think that we're not all one big family, because we just simply are.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very beautiful perspective and statement. So tell me, what is a holistic psychiatrist?
Mm-hmm. So that was one of the things I wanted to say that has shifted somewhat. And, holistic psychiatry is someone who, I think what it really does is the paradigm has shifted a number of times from the time that I found out about psychiatry to then, going into mental health, and then actually becoming a psychiatrist and doing a residency and doing a fellowship, and then having a really storied career in every single corner of psychiatry that exists. I've had somewhere around 40,000 or more patients that I've entered a note in a chart on. So that qualifies as me being their psychiatrist. When I went in initially, I went in because I was really just a mental health worker. I was a child care worker at a state hospital in Michigan. Having dropped out of college a couple times, tried college once and ran away because it just sucked, and ran around the country trying to figure out what my life was about. I got on a Greyhound bus and just kind of bust around for a while until I realized I probably needed to get a job. So I went back to college to get what would be a bona fide job, but I hated it even worse the second time. So I dropped out again. And when I came home and told my mom in 1980 that I was never, ever, ever going to go back to college for any reason again, she was in general approval, I should say, but said, well, you do have to work in the meantime. It's like, okay. So she got me an application at a state mental facility for adolescent boys. There was adolescents of all ages, but my job was with adolescent boys, or adolescent boys and girls. It was a whole state mental health facility. And, there I began to communicate effectively. There is when I first got paid to be a communicator. I had been a pretty good communicator early on. I was born to a family that had two older brothers, and they helped me be pretty precocious. By the time I was in kindergarten, I was speaking and writing and reading and doing math, and that was pretty far ahead most of the kindergarten students. So, I was just like, really loved the idea of communication. And this was the first time I looked for where was I going to be a master communicator, and this job at Fairlawn Center was the place where, wow, look, I could communicate and somehow get paid for it. The thing I didn't like was the way that psychiatry was treating our kids. And, there was a psychiatrist on call all the time, and all we had to do was call him and say that, Timmy was up too late, or Johnny and Jimmy got into a fight. And he would come by with his weapon, this is what his weapon looked like. And, and he would come by and he would talk to Jimmy maybe for 2 seconds. And then he would talk to us, the childcare workers, for maybe 5 seconds, and talk to the nurse for 10 seconds, write something in the chart. Then we would have to go get Jimmy and like hold him down, 2 or 3 or 4 of us, and then inject something into Jimmy that would leave him sort of out of his misery for the next 12 or 24 hours. And if Jimmy didn't say anything for 12 or 24 hours because he was in a stupor, that would be considered a success story. And I just could not handle that every time we had to do that. I just could not accept that at all. Mm-hmm. My brother was a psychiatrist, a brother who was 14 years older than me. And at the time, psychiatry seemed to be built on communication. So I just made it my decision to become a psychiatrist and come on back and bring communication effectively into the field, so that I wouldn't have to see that, or like it was something I could do to counteract that exact experience. Unfortunately, and so went back to school 13 years later. During those 13 years, Prozac was introduced to the world. And Prozac really just flipped psychiatry, mental health, and you could say the whole world on its ear, because Prozac was the drug that had us now starting to believe that if we were uncomfortable with something, if we felt unpleasant, if we were unsure, anxious, or depressed, or afraid, or if we were having trouble sleeping, or trouble having sex, or having too much sex, or writing too many checks, or having funny thoughts, or too fast of thoughts, or too slow of thoughts, all of that, there must mean that there was something wrong with us, and that we had a pill to deal with that. So biological psychiatry was built right while I was in medical school. And after that, chemical imbalances were thought to be what represented any kind of discomfort. So when you were uncomfortable, it was your fault. And that's really how we've lived life, actually, between now and then. People who say that they have some condition, or maybe, it's one way to look at it is that you have a condition, but another way to look at it is that you're just human, and so over time, again, we'll skip kind of the details, but you can guess that as I came out and now they were teaching psychiatrists to do the thing that psychiatrists have now been typecast to do, which is, oh yeah, you're the field that actually prescribes medicine. It's like my life I became an international expert in the thing that I hated doing. And, that's a good way to live a duplicitous life. I went into the field so that I would not have to deal with people medicating my kids. And there I was, like a medicating machine. Mm-hmm. This takes a toll, it takes a toll on your heart. It's a soul sacrifice, each and every prescription I wrote. And if I really did have 40,000 patients, I guess I can estimate that I wrote for over 100,000 prescriptions during my career. By 2006, this wasn't working for me. And, there was a lot of things that happened in 2006 that allowed me to pivot and, shift my paradigm a bit. And I began to really look at what was helping and what wasn't. I began to take people off of medicine, and they got better, like reliably, as long as I worked with them, that there was nothing really wrong with them. They were only going through a human experience. There was some opportunity to take people off their medicine, and later then get that medicines aren't the problem either. It's the idea that people have that they need to take medicines to be better. In other words, that they buy their diagnosis that they're afflicted or defective. So I began to undiagnose people shortly after that as well, and really have them see that they're just going through a human experience, and that maybe that's all it is, and that I can relate to that, or I can resonate with that, or connect with that. And there was healing that would take place right then. Now, it's not for everybody to go that way. If for your audience, if they have found something that's working, that, has you at the top of your game based on what you're doing, like, medicating and diagnosing and all that, and it's working for you, then by all means, and I really mean this, don't even consider stopping. I mean, if it's working, good for you. You found something that's working. That's really, really great. And I really mean that. This is more for the people who have not found what's working yet and know that they could be living a more optimized life. So once I started undiagnosing and then unmedicating and then frankly undoctrinating, taking people away from their doctors, like having it be my job to work myself out of a job, what ended up happening is that I became more holistic in my approach, just seeing that psychological is not separate from physical, that many physical concerns are actually deeply rooted in psychological concerns and vice versa. Many psychological concerns are deeply rooted in physical concerns. That's where holistic started to be something that I did, and called myself. Now, the other thing that has happened since that name and since, even the advent of Welcome to Humanity, was that I've altered that as well. I no longer call myself necessarily a holistic psychiatrist, although if I had to call myself a psychiatrist, that's what I would call myself. Instead, I now call myself a restorative or transformational coach, where I walk people away from their diagnoses. A psychiatrist doesn't do that. They never taught us how to do that. So it's unfair to psychiatry to call myself a psychiatrist, to say that I don't diagnose people, because psychiatrists definitely diagnose people. But a transformational or restorative coach doesn't do that. And instead, I take people from knowing themselves as being defective and afflicted to actually knowing that they're not inherently defective or inherently afflicted, and really give them that edge to realize that we are all humans walking through the world. Now, takes something for somebody to do that. You have to give up on your diagnosis. You have to take responsibility for the stupid things that you do, or for the things that you don't like about what you do, the things that make you ashamed, or have you feeling guilty, or have you, the things in life, or even the things that you eat or drink or take in that are leading to negative vibrational experiences. But once you do that, once you decide to take responsibility for all of your life, including the stuff you're doing that you just can't stand, because that's part of being human too, then we get to start from level ground. We get to actually grow and cure from that point. We get to really actually heal from connecting with another person. And all I am doing really is continuing to gravitate to what works. But in the end, what's really happening here is that I'm just a glorified childcare looking to do right for the kids that I met in 1980. And even before that, looking to master communication and realize that it's the heart of all healing.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And, I guess time frame wise, I probably would have been one of those kids that you would have had to have treat when I was 15. I was inpatient program. And for me, that was a very traumatic
For sure
experience. And in my opinion, it did more harm than it did good, which
sure.
led me to a path of drug use, use seeking the drugs. I just kind of took that mentality. What's the point? No one listens. My experiences aren't being validated. I am the victim, so I might as well just numb out. And for me, my story's a little different. It took me to get a really hard medical diagnosis, chronic kidney disease, and a prognosis of only 5 years to really evaluate and change my lifestyle habits, which ultimately led to me feeling mentally amazing. I started getting medicated at 11 years old, and I thought that was going to be my life. And so as I started cleaning up lifestyle habits, all of the sudden the depression, the anxiety that I was plagued with started to dissipate. And that was, this door opened, and it was just like, oh, and I, like you, didn't, my first attempt in college did not go so well. And it took me really finding my passion to desire to go back into academia and pursue that whole route. However, I knew that what I was going into was not necessarily how I was going to practice as a registered dietitian nutritionist. So I currently specialize in mental health and substance abuse, and helping, individuals understand the importance of nutrition. And I tell people all the time, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this, because I hear from patients that say, well, I have a chemical imbalance and I need the medication and I'm never going to get better, or it's genetic and I'm never going to get better. And I always encourage them, Unfortunately, a lot of these diagnoses have a nutritional deficiency at the root of the problem. However, this is never taken into consideration throughout all of the diagnostic processes that occur during programming.
Mhm.
So, what are your thoughts about the role nutrition plays with mental health?
Well, it plays it plays an infinitely mm, uh, primary role in the world of mental health. Like, you are what you eat, you are what you take in. Uh, there, the relationship between food and drugs is so close that they are even have an administration that covers both of them called the FDA. And the idea here is that what you take into your system really becomes you, and if you monitor that, and that's frankly not just with what you take into your mouth, but what you take into your eyes or your ears, your nose, what you touch, what you see, uh, what you watch. In these days, we have so many flat screens. What you're looking at, um, it's really a critical piece of mental health. You see, we that was another thing that happened in the 80s, was this idea that the psychological person, or the idea that there's two of us, there's a physical self and a psychological self, got separated somehow in our thinking. And then that whole paradigm got bought by the entire prevailing community. But it's kind of silly to think that they're not related, and or not interrelated, or not even like correlated, let alone not causative of each other's issues. So many psychological conditions are a direct result of things, toxins that we have taken in, or good things that we have not taken in, like even for instance, enough water, or enough air, or enough rest, or these kinds of things that we already really know are at the heart of being healthy. And when we don't have those things, well, we suffer in all areas of our life, including the psychological aspects of our life. So I really honor that you're here for nutrition and diet as being a critical piece of it. I'm going on a retreat this weekend, a ceremonious retreat from the 1st to the 4th, so Friday to Monday. And our dietas started today for that. And there's a purpose for that. There's a purpose to sort of settle into our own health, to really clean ourselves up. When we're clean, it doesn't mean we're going to get a great life, but we sure have a much better chance of absorbing or of responding effectively if the machine's running clean. And when the machine isn't running clean, and with all the crazy shit that they've put into our food, or that now is called food, it's never was food, and now we're eating stuff that simply wasn't even ever meant to be digested. There's no doubt it's like putting sugar in a gas tank. It's not gonna make the car run better, even if sugar is sugar is sweet. It's sure not gonna make your car run better. And that's what we do. We eat a lot of junk. We drink a lot of things that are bad for us, and smoke things that are bad for us, ingest things that are bad for us, and then wonder why we're not feeling well physically. Well, the same thing holds true, that it maybe the same explanation is, if you don't take care of yourself effectively, like your whole self, the holistic self, then there's going to be mental manifestations as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that perspective and explanation. I have to applaud you for having the courage to step out of the traditional paradigm. I'm curious if there was any resistance on your part with kind of veering off what everyone else was doing in psychiatry, if there was backlash from peers and, others in the field, as you really focused on getting to the root of the human experience and providing people with true healing. Hey guys, I'm going to interrupt this episode for a really brief message and to introduce you to today's amazing podcast sponsors, Waveblock. If you know me, you know that I am all about reducing toxicity. And to be perfectly honest with you, this whole 5G thing has got me a little freaked out. Did you know that your phone and AirPods emit radiation? According to the CDC, your phone uses radio frequency radiation to transmit its signal. This cloud of radiation just sits outside your brain the entire time you're using your phone or on your AirPods. If you listen to podcasts, talk on your phone, do Zoom calls all day, that exposure really starts to add up. The frequencies from your phone actually pass through your brain, which is really scary and can cause negative effects like headaches, foggy brain, fatigue, and other issues. I love using my WaveBlock EMF protective stickers for my phone and AirPods to direct these harmful frequencies away from my body and my brain. WaveBlock's accredited lab-tested line of products helps significantly reduce the amount of radiation you are getting exposed to with their easy-to-apply EMF blocking stickers. They have protection for AirPods, AirPod Pros, and all of the recent iPhone models. These stickers don't interfere with anything, so you can still use your phone case or whatever it is that you like. They just offer all-day protection. Make sure you head to waveblock.com and take advantage of a 20% discount using the code Heather. I'll make sure to link it in the show notes for easy access. So make sure you head to waveblock.com to get your 20% off discount and use the code Heather.
Yeah. Well, it isn't like people ask me that every so often, and it isn't like I really, it's not backlash. It's just that I fit less and less, people would say, well, that person's depressed, so they need X, Y, and Z medications. And I would think to myself, no, please don't give them that, because they're actually going to get worse if you give them that, even though the marketing says that they're going to get better. Please don't treat them like that, because that's actually going to get them worse. So I would say the backlash is more from me. And was there any resistance on the way out? Well, I stayed in the field for 32 years. So, what I did as a way of managing that field, the reason why I have 40,000 patients, the reason I have like such a killer resume, my resume is ridiculous. My CV is ridiculous. It is so powerful. It is insane. And the reason why it's insane is because each job that I had, I stayed in long enough to realize that I can't work there. And then I went and got my next job. I just did that over and over and over and over and over again. So now I have a CV that looks like I've been in every corner of psychiatry, which is true. And that's because I quit every single corner of psychiatry before I went on to the next one, just looking for, is there one here that can work for me? And I eventually got, pretty good. The last couple that I did, this idea of telepsychiatry, that was not bad. I mean, that was like 10 years, 12 years ago, I began to do telepsychiatry through these techniques. Most people had never talked to a computer. These days, if you actually haven't talked to a computer, they consider you psychiatrically ill. But back in the day, no one had ever talked to a computer. And there I was doing telepsychiatry online. So I could do it from, I lived in Israel for a while. So I could do it from Israel to Illinois, or I could do it from Paris to rural California. And or I could do it from anywhere to anywhere. And I was home, I was home doing it. So I was actually drinking my own tea or resting in my own bed between patients or something like that. And there was a new level of real deep appreciation for telepsychiatry, for the value of it. And I even wrote some major articles about the power of telepsychiatry. Now, of course, it's the gold standard and it's being maligned. Now it's no longer such a powerful tool. Most people are just missing the essence of what it takes to do psychiatry online. If all you're going to do is the same shit you were doing on the ground by just seeing someone for a couple of minutes and prescribing medicines, and it's not that much better, that's for sure. And then also I went to the prisons and jails finally, and that was a great experience and a terrible, horrible experience at the same time. But I think that rounded off so that by the time I was done with prisons and jails, I think that I couldn't find an area of psychiatry where I hadn't visited or hadn't been a leader in my career. And I eventually got to the point, well, you know what, here I am. I still got my head on. I still see that communication and connection are at the heart of healing. And I think I'll be backing out now. But even the backing out was tricky. It was tricky because I don't blame my psychiatrist, and I don't blame medications, and I don't really blame anyone. It's not like they're bad or anything like that. I mean, I still like the people, of course. And some of the mental health workers in the world are just flat out amazing. I mean, the best people in the world are in mental health. I would say that. It's just that practicing the way I needed to, practicing aligned with myself, isn't how psychiatry got built. And eventually I was no longer a good fit for being a general psychiatrist. And it's almost my responsibility to step out then and find where I am a good fit. And I still struggle with that. These days, like I said, I've switched my name from Dr. Moss to Dr. Fred, and, switched my title from holistic psychiatry to restorative coach, and do just enough to continue to sort of back out of the maze, tipping my hat the whole time, thanking the machine for letting me visit and get right into the middle of the whole mess, and also to back out. And I feel very, very fortunate that I'm where I am now, both safe and capable and passionate about continuing to bring communication and connection at the heart of all healing to the world, sourcing that for others. Much more aligned with who I was in 1980 when I met those kids. So
that's beautiful. And again, I applaud the bravery, because it really does take bravery to let go of that attachment to the credentials, to the commitment, to the financial debt, all of the things that it took to get us to that spot. So many people listening right now probably are in a position very similar, where they're married to a career or a professional pathway, a job that they are absolutely just miserable at. And they have become a victim of those circumstances. And we're conditioned by society, especially, I know, like my grandparents and my parents' generations, you get one job and you stick with that job. And that's, unfortunately brings a lot of pain and suffering for many.
yeah.
So there's a lot of people out there right now, I'm confident, who are sitting there going, wow, how can I do this?
Yeah. It's that's the essence of the newest brand that you didn't mention, that wasn't in your bio initially, but in the last few years, I've really been asking that exact question. And the idea of true voice is what's gone forth. So my most recent book that just came out last month is called Find Your True Voice. And your listeners can, if they're resonating with me in any way or resonating with what I'm saying, the book goes a little bit deeper into the whole philosophy and methodology of the Find Your True Voice technology. So as true voice, what's here is to really take a look at ourselves, keep ourselves clean, nutrition wise, keep ourselves clean, in what we take in, respond effectively, maybe mindfulness, maybe we would call it exercise, but movement, or maybe actually living and surrounding ourselves with positive influences whenever we can. And when we do toxify ourselves, like finding a way to regenerate, to detoxify. And really from there, there's an opportunity, and especially now in these very desperate times, and we sure are living desperate and difficult and challenging times. If not now, when are you going to come to grips with who you really are? To live a life of quiet desperation, and to go to your grave with your song unsung. That's what Henry David Thoreau said, is probably the biggest tragedy that I can see in all of humanity, meaning that you've lived a whole life and no one ever got to know who you really were. What is that? Like, how does that work? How is that okay? And so finding true voice, which means you don't have to go very far to find your true voice. It's right there with you, every one of you. All of you. You don't have to go over there. You don't have to go to an ashram. You don't have to go to Tibet. You don't have to go in a cave. You don't have to sit underneath a tree. You don't have to do any of that, really. It's a matter of, what your truth is, actually, because when you're not telling it. You definitely know the experience of not telling your truth, either keeping it quiet or actually manipulating it or embellishing it. Because that's an experience that sits with you. It sits like a stone in your shoe, or a rock in your belly, for that matter. And I'm only asking people to get a little bit closer to their true voice. And once you start doing that, like once you start getting that being authentic with yourself is all you have, then a couple things happen. Not only will you be able to maybe alter the job that you're so stuck to that you can't stand. And you're right, there's literally millions of people who are in jobs that are flat out miserable doing it, but are doing it for some unclear reason, to keep up the momentum, or to bring home bacon, or to keep their prestige, or whatever is there. there's some, I had heard it for a lot of years, and it took me a long time as well. I mean, I had a great job, right? It's a very powerful job to be a psychiatrist, extremely powerful. And, I have an MD, so I could get deep respect. All I have to do is start talking with an MD and people are at least curious about what I have to say about something. So there's a lot of prestige, and, there was a lot of debt and, a lot of money in one way or another. Ultimately, all we have is ourself. And so the opportunity of really stepping into your true voice and delivering your authentic message to your community, whether that's your family or even your spouse or your partner or your children, authenticity is more important than agreement. I mean, haven't you had experience where you've talked to somebody and they're saying something that's diametrically opposed in their content to what you believe, and yet you really respect them because they're authentic in their delivery? Because authenticity really wins. In the end, what you really need to get is that if you can burrow down to what's already here called your true voice and start delivering that, not only do you get to feel the peace of no longer lying or no longer hiding, or no longer just, maybe lying. Some people don't like to be called a liar, so that's fine. You may be manipulating the truth. Once you start really getting in touch with what's so right now and deliver that effectively, not only do you feel peace, but the people around you get a taste of that peace, and they may get an invitation that authenticity is what you're looking for. And they may be able to deliver truth to you that you didn't know they thought. So you may actually meet somebody you never knew right there in your own home, in your own family. And that might happen simply by being authentic in their presence. So authenticity and true voice are the access. And, how do you get to your true voice? Well, you listen really, really carefully to what's going on in your world, not just the other person you're with, but who are you with? Where is it? What needles do you want to move forward? What do you want to do here? Who do you want to be here? What do you want to represent here? So true voice is not simply blurting out, look, I hate you and always have. That's not true voice, even if you have. You see, the idea is if there's been displeasure in some ways and you want to speak your true voice, you got to take into consideration the context of the surroundings and who are you with, and is saying what you're about to say going to move that whole conversation forward? Because if it isn't, if it isn't, and it isn't, then that's not true voice. That's just being combative and using your voice as a weapon. So regurgitating what's been there for years is not the same as true voice. What's here is to use your exquisite creativity on the razor's edge and really just bring your truth forward when it can, with the full intention, when it can move the needle forward. And when you can do that, no one can really fault you for bringing what is true. And, we might find that our truths aren't so far away from each other if we're all being authentic about it.
Mm-hmm. So would you consider that true voice also a component of inner knowledge, that inner knowing that is associated with that sixth sense of intuition?
That's one way to look at it. There's like you have to be a little bit careful with that. I would say the answer is yes, because what intuition is, look, it has a chance of sounding woo-woo or, like that. And people could reject it. Oh, there she goes again, talking about sixth sense. But here's the thing, the intuition that got built there is the intuition that's been there since before you started elementary school. All that is a memory of what you knew when you arrived. All that is really is just a human nature notion of what's really so before you started looking at all the disruption and corruption that you were introduced to as a child about when to stay quiet or when to speak or how to manipulate your world, blame your sister for your own problem or start crying so you can get a lollipop, or all those things that created duplicity and lying in the early stages that never got fixed are still in your life. So what the truth is. That's the thing, is that when you actually tell your truth, that experience. And here's the thing. If you learned right now that that today was your last day on the planet, and it's just been determined that this is it, it's over tonight at midnight, what would you do with that time? And I've asked a lot of people this question. Almost everybody answers the same way, which is that they would go tell somebody a truth. Mm-hmm. They know what the truth. They know, what truth you're not saying. Mm-hmm. That you haven't told that person that you love them, or you haven't told that person that you took $5 from them 25 years ago and it's been bugging you, or you You haven't, or maybe you would go tell someone the truth again so that they knew the truth. We absolutely cherish the truth. We pretend that we don't because we can't believe anybody else because everybody's saying different things. And it's hard for, such good liars out there. But the thing about the liars is that they also have access to the truth. You want to know how I know? Because the stories they make up have to be made up to sound like something called the truth. In order to be a great liar, you have to have a really good sense of what truth is so that you can make up a story that lands in that possibility. So it's not like liars and truth tellers. Liars are just truth tellers. They just are using the same data in a different direction. So we know what's important. We know that we're looking for the truth. If I was to ask you, if you want to start a relationship with someone and you knew that they were going to be 100% truthful the rest of your life, would you choose to be with them? And the answer is, well, invariably, yes, of course. Why would I not? The only problem that people have with each other is when they're untrue with each other. So if we know all that about our truth and we know where our truth is, what's in the way? And what's in the way is this weird thing called fear. We're afraid we're going to be canceled. We're afraid we're going to be censored, or we're afraid we're going to be rejected or thrown off the island or, opposed or bullied or whatever we're afraid of. And some of those fears are legitimate. But I have to say, even if you act like somebody, pretend to be somebody in order to protect the person that you really are so no one ever sees you, first of all, that's a totally ineffective way to live life. But secondly, it doesn't even prevent from you being ostracized and rejected anyways by that fake person that you're trying to be. I mean, it can easily happen no matter whether you act like you or you act like somebody else to protect you. When you really get that, it's like if you have a choice and either way you're going to be ostracized or trolled or hated or rejected or censored or canceled, then you probably should just choose to be you. It's a whole lot easier actually to be you than it is to make up silly stories that you got to remember every time you bring it back to life.
Mm-hmm. So why do we care so much? Why do we
Yeah.
care what others think and the fear and all of those emotions associated with that?
Yeah. We care because we're social beings, and there is nothing more important to us than to unify with another person or all people. I had a discussion earlier today, really looking at the imagination. If we could learn, like if all of a sudden all 7.8 billion of us were had a unified intention, just all of a sudden something happened, we've had some stuff happen, like all of a sudden now we're dealing with this as a world. Like we're moving as a world right now, but we're moving in kind of crazy directions, like multiple different simultaneous directions. It's causing a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of divisiveness and division. If you would consider that there would be something where 7.8 billion people all of a sudden realized that they needed to work together in order to get something done, this would be a pretty formidable planet. We have some experts in every area of life somewhere or another in this world. And if we could actually utilize and delegate them to take on a particular project, we literally could get anything done. I'm quite certain. Whatever. Each one of us can almost get anything done, but 7.8 billion of us working effectively and collaboratively would definitely be able to get stuff done. So why is it? Well, we're afraid that we're going to be dropped off of that and then kicked to the curb. And not only that, so we're afraid of pain and we're afraid of death. And, we realize that we need each other. And therefore, sometimes it looks like a better idea to just shut up or alter our truth in order to stay with somebody than it does to say our truth and take the risk that maybe that person isn't going to like us anymore or isn't going to respect us, because we care so much. Even those of us who say, I don't care what people think about me, they're pretty suspect. They do. In fact, what they want you to know about them is that they don't care what people think of it. They care so much about what people think of them that they're actually making up that they don't care what people think of them. So that what you can think of them is that they're the kind of person who doesn't care that people think about them.
I love that. Such a great, such a
True.
great truth.
It's just true.
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, you are such a brilliant, brilliant educator. And the way that you articulate, I feel that it's very user friendly and that it's digestible, information that we can really connect with. So with that being said, I'm very curious to hear your opinion about We get caught up in our thoughts, right? And we haven't learned how to differentiate between our thoughts and our actual being. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. The first thing, yeah, I just was thinking about this yesterday, so that's great. Somewhere in the back of my head, so I don't know that I said anything, but I was definitely thinking about this last evening. How my thoughts went dark. I think, many times a day my thoughts go dark. It may sound like I'm a master, but that's because I have as deep dark thoughts as anybody that I've ever met, and that's part of my humanity. And my thoughts went dark, and I was like, wow, if I think I am that which I'm thinking right here, I'm gonna go down the rabbit hole, and I may never come out.
Hmm.
So one way to do that is this idea that I am not my thoughts, I am not my feelings. How do I know that? Because I actually can describe my thoughts, and who is ever describing my thoughts isn't my thoughts. If I could say I think this, there's the person or the me that is actually describing my thoughts that isn't my thoughts. So since I'm separate from that person, I can get that this Freddie, who was there in the playpen before I went to elementary school, the same Freddie who was there to bring joy to my family back when I was born. It's the same Freddie. I actually am very familiar with that guy. I totally know that guy. I've been with him 100% of the time. So me and him are good. And there's a way of getting that these are just thoughts. And even though I'm tend to conflate them as being who I am as a person, if I can get that these are just thoughts, these are just feelings, these are just emotions, and therefore subject to shifting without shifting any external data, I do not have to shift nothing has to change in the world for me to start thinking something entirely different about how the world is going than how I just thought about it a minute ago.
Hmm.
Without any data shift whatsoever, my thoughts can shift like dramatically. If that's true, then clearly I am not my thoughts. And if I am not my thoughts, then maybe this person who hovers over the top, maybe that's what meditation is for. These things that, or eating very well, like really taking care of ourselves mindfully. Maybe that's what allows for this, is that seeing over the top, you can see, oh, I'm not my thoughts. I'm just having those thoughts, and they are threatening to become who I think I am, because there's thinking again. But if I can stay separate from that long enough, more than likely what'll happen is the next occurrence will happen, or the next, blink will happen. And I'll be thinking differently about the world than I just was, whether it was good or bad. I mean, thoughts tend to shift without any actual impetus from the external world. They're just thoughts after all.
Hmm. I love that. Such a great explanation. And I think it's so relevant because more, we've been conditioned into society that really embraces criticism, judgment, shame, guilt. And so if we think that we are our thoughts and we're in that place where we're having the dark thoughts, which myself included, have them on a daily basis, and I just let them go, and next thing you know, they're gone. But if I'm judging those dark thoughts, next thing I know, I'm going down into that toilet bowl that's pulling me down, and then ultimately, making me question, am I supposed to take my own life? Like, am I such a
Right.
terrible person? And I feel that this is an important conversation to have right now with
Mhm.
everything going on in the world. People are feeling so lost. Suicide is just through the roof, especially amongst adolescents and, the youth, the teenage youth as well. And so, I think that it's just so important that we understand that we are not our thoughts,
Mhm.
and why we feel so attached to thinking that we are our thoughts.
Yeah. Well, the conventional educational system sure does worship the whole notion of thinking, and that
Mhm.
thinking is at the core of our being. When we're able to back out of that a little bit and start getting that, not only there's thinking, there's feeling, there's emotions, there's being, and they're all different realms to look at the world. Maybe the most valuable one is being of those four, but it's not like they cancel out the other few, the feelings, emotions, and thinking. It's just that we pay so much attention to our thinking, and many of us think that we can think our way through anything. that, that thinking is the answer for all things, like I think, therefore I am, or something. But the truth is, thinking is only one way through it. And it's massively flawed by the fact that we don't have a true base understanding of what, the eternal world of existence really is made of. And without that, we use our very minimal, reductive way of the reduced way of thinking. What we think we know as foundational facts, all of which are subject to alteration. Every single one that we think we know is subject to alteration. Everything we think we know is subject to alteration, especially the things that we think we know that we know. The things that we know, those are the scariest ones. Those are the things we're really certain that we know that we know. I mean, everyone knows it. That's why we know it. Those things are as scary, or maybe scarier than even the things that we think that we know. We become so attached to those as being truths, and then we build our truths on top of those truths, when in fact they're just another form of, sand on a beach, subject to relearning at any given moment when we learn something that undoes those, even if they're laws of nature. Someone had the audacity to call them laws of nature, and now we call them laws of nature because that's what they said. And in fact, when we just detach from all of that, there's a opportunity to enjoy all of life, and then including the miserable stuff. And again, that's where Welcome to Humanity got its roots.
Absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about cognitive dissonance and how this plays a role with achieving sustainable behavior change? Why, what is cognitive dissonance, and why is it so difficult to change our behaviors?
Yeah. I think that cognitive dissonance is, as I understand it, is sort of the distance between what we think and how we do, like the distance between what we think and how we do. So we end up doing things that are inconsistent with what we think we should do. Is that a fair, respectful answer of what you're asking? Yeah. When you look at that, it's because there's something about untrue and inauthentic and misalignment here that is subject to cognitive resonance. I mean, really getting to the space that when you come in touch, the closer you come in touch with your own reason for being here, with what really matters to you, with really coming into touch with what is your authentic self, what's at the core of you, minute by minute, by the way. It can change tomorrow, no problem. You are not, if you say your truth today and it changes tomorrow, that's called humanity. It's not called anything else. It's not called you lied yesterday, that's for sure. It's called humanity. And so when you can speak your truth at each and every second, well, there's a freedom that goes on there, sort of like a cleaning of the exhaust system. And when you're doing that, I think you get a much less load of cognitive dissonance. And when you look at cognitive dissonance, as an experience, probably it's an indicator that something in your life is out of line with what it could or should be, or what you would want it to be. The kind of person that yourself to be is not behaving like that. Is probably being affected by either an external interrupter, or by something in your world that isn't being true to yourself.
Thank you for that explanation. I really wish you and I had more time. I'd love to pick your brain more. I truly, today, just phenomenal, mind-blowing information that I am sure is resonating with many of the listeners. So I thank you again for being on. And before I let you go, just give me 3 quick tips for individuals to lean into in terms of alternatives to healing mental illness that are more effective than the conventional methods.
Yeah. One is, really take into consideration that mental illness is a made up conversation that came long after how you were feeling. And there might be nothing inherently wrong with you at all. You might be just going through life like we all are, not having a clue what's coming next and being kind of concerned about it, occasionally afraid, depressed, anxious, and all that. And that, if you can see yourself as non-defective, if you can see that at the core of yourself, you're just another human doing that, that is a really, really great place to start. Really getting that if you're like, oh no, there is something, doctor, I can't believe you're saying that. I need to be sick. I am sick. I've been told I'm sick. I can't believe you're telling me I'm not sick. I've run into a lot of people like that. If you need to see yourself as sick, I guess I can't really argue with you, but then you might want to ask yourself, what's the value of seeing yourself as sick? You can have your same experiences without calling yourself sick. Is that okay? Or do you need to know that you're sick? And so the idea is, I don't want to diminish your experiences at all. Like I want to emphasize them. They're yours. It's great. I mean, it's amazing. It's so amazing that you have all the experiences, including the miserable ones. And I'm not saying I'm rooting for your miserable ones. I'm saying, hello, welcome to humanity. And when you get that, we're all starting at the same space and we can move together. So that's the first thing I would think of. The next thing I think of is something that, that you've been saying, which is, what you take into your sensual system, it clearly affects who you are as a human, not just with nutrition, but, with your eyes, with your ears, with your entire senses, like what you touch, who you're with, those kinds of things. Are really important, and they really become you once you allow them into your body or into your soul. They can be cleansed, and they can be, you can be, what should I say, like detoxified. And I invite you to do that, and that might be through really altering your diet and altering what you're watching and altering how you use your time or how you sleep or who you hang out with. So much of that contributes to our own sense of negative vibrational energy. Let's see, if I was to pick a third one, like how to handle mental health, I would say the best thing to do in the whole world, creativity. I have a book called The Creative 8. You can find it at welcometohumanity.net/creative or /creative8. There's a PDF there and an audiobook. And creativity is a great way to manage this, like art, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, gardening. Those kinds of things really do help a lot while you're doing them. You might notice that negative experiences disappear. So creativity is great, but even that book talks about a punchline. There's a trump card in that book, and that book is just being of service. If you have anything to do, if nothing is working, if you're like, I don't want to get out of bed, if you just help anybody do anything, I absolutely guarantee a reduction, if not an elimination, a complete disappearance of the negative experience while you're helping anyone do anything.
Absolutely. Mic drop. Thank you so much for your time. I'll make sure that I attach the books in the show notes to make it easy for everyone to find. And Dr. Fred, I cannot thank you enough. Such amazing information.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a summit coming up as well. I don't know when this is coming out, but the summit is going to probably be ongoing for months. I put together a bunch of influencers, high-level influencers that you and your audience have heard of, some major players who are ready to be interviewed about how they became influencers and really helping others see that they're influencers. You are influencers just as you are, as soon as you get in touch with your true voice and bring it. And all proceeds to that are going to the war-torn, disrupted folks in Ukraine and Eastern Europe and in all of the wars. But right now we're focusing on Ukraine and Eastern Europe. So if your fans and your audience, your listeners want to go there, the best way to find that is We the People Summit. WeThePeopleSummit.online is where that registration takes place. And then I have a circle community that's True Voice. .circle.so, and that's true-voice.circle.so, and that's where my community is meeting, and I hope to see all of you there.
Fabulous. Everyone better head over there. Well, thank you again. Sending you all the love. Thanks for joining us on the Think Yourself Healthy podcast. Make sure you leave a review and let me know what you think. I love reading your feedback. Come hang out with me on Instagram at Heather Duranja, and don't forget to take a screenshot that you're listening to the podcast and tag me. I love to share it. See you on the next episode.